Hi, I'm John Stevenson. We're going to be looking at Genesis and the Babylonian creation myths, focusing especially upon one in particular. There's a number of myths from Mesopotamia about creation. We're going to be looking at the one known as the Enuma Elish. So this Enuma Elish, the term actually means one on high. It's actually taken from the very first line of the poem. We're going to get into that in a second. It was originally found in 7 tablets, and folks wonder, gee, does that relate to the 7 days of creation, 6 days, and the 7th day God rested, like you have in Genesis? Probably that might be circumstantial, because we've found other copies where it's also told on other tablets, and sometimes they were just bigger tablets or smaller tablets. So they found it, I believe, on 10 different tablets in another scenario. But the story begins where you have Apsu and Tiamat. They're like Mr. and Mrs. Primal God, and they are in existence. And the story starts off when the sky above was not named, and the earth beneath did not yet bear a name. And the primeval Apsu, who begat them. Notice everything is begotten by these two gods. And Chaos, Tiamat, the mother of them both. Their waters were mingled together. It's these two, the sky god and the sea god sort of come together, and their waters are mingled together, and no field was formed, no marsh was to be seen. There's not yet land. There's, the world hadn't yet been created. When of the gods none had been called into being, you go right back to the very beginning of all things. There were no gods. There was no earth. There was no water. There was no anything. And the story goes on where chaos erupts with the creation of the other gods. All the other gods show up, and now you've got problems. It was okay when it was just Apsu and Tiamat, but now Apsu is killed, and Tiamat takes a new husband in Kingu, and Marduk fights Tiamat and uses her corpse to fashion the earth and the sky. So this is, it's a story of epic battles before there's anything, and then these gods are fighting, and now earth and sky. Which, if you think about it, if you're living in any kind of land, it's the down here and the up there that are being created. The story goes on where Marduk kills Kingu and then creates man from his blood, and the Sabbatu is established as an observance. Now that sounds a little bit like our Sabbath, but it doesn't refer to every 7 days. It refers to the full moon that appears once a month. How the moon goes through its different phases, and once a month the moon is completely there. Before that you could see part of it, and after that you can only see part of it. But 1 day a month the moon is in its full shape, and that happens, of course, when we talk about a month, that happens every 29 point something days. 29 and a quarter or something like that days, which is a lunar calendar. Now notice just the beginning of this account, and I put it right alongside the Genesis account. The Enuma Elish starts off when in the height heaven was not named and earth beneath did not yet bear a name. The Genesis account starts off in the beginning. God created the heavens and the earth. And then we read about how the primeval Apsu, who begat them, and I don't read of a begetting, but I see in Genesis chapter 1 where in the beginning God created the heavens and the earth. So there's the heavens and the earth that are mentioned. There's either a begetting or a creating. In the Enuma Elish, there's chaos that's there. In the Genesis account is rather chaotic, where the earth is without form and void, and darkness is there on the face of the deep. That's rather chaotic. And we often talk about that, the sort of the chaotic nature at the beginning of creation. And notice in the Enuma Elish, their waters were mingled together, and in Genesis we read of God moving, the Spirit of God moving on the face of the waters. Now, all of these elements are side by side in the first few sentences, just the first few lines of the story. That's the way the story begins. In the Enuma Elish, Tiamat engulfs the world in a primal chaos. In the Genesis account, the world was unformed and unfilled. It was rather chaotic. It was, I like the translation, desolate and deserted. So the two words sort of rhyme, and as they do in the Hebrew text. In the Enuma Elish, light comes from the gods. In the Genesis account, God he says, let there be light, and light comes into existence. In the Enuma Elish, Marduk makes the stars of the zodiac and ordains the year. In the Genesis account, on the fourth day, God sets the moon, the sun and the moon for signs, for seasons, for days, and for years, and that's established there. In the Enuma Elish, Marduk makes man from the blood of Kingu. In the Genesis account, God makes man in his own image and likeness. In the Enuma Elish, we read of Marduk commanding the horns to determine 6 days, the 7th day to divide the crown, and then the 14th day to be the Sabbatu, that day when the moon is full. In the Genesis account, God creates he creates it all in 6 days, and rests on the 7th day, which he appoints as not the Sabbatu, as the Sabbath, as the rest. So the comparison between the two, between these two descriptions of creation are striking. Yes, major differences, and yet striking comparisons. Now, what shall we make of the comparisons? Yes, there are differences, but what shall we make of the comparisons, given, and I'm going to talk about this principle in the next lecture, that two writers do not independently express thought alike, at least not normally. What shall we make of that? I would suggest that Moses is giving to us a refutation of the accepted mythos that was held in antiquity, as he goes point by point to show that God is the true creator of heaven and earth. He's the one who brought all this about. It would be a little bit like taking the modern day evolutionists' theory about a Big Bang and saying God is the one who Big Banged all of creation into existence. Well, did he actually literally do it with the Big Bang? No. I'm using that to describe what God did. I'm correcting wrong ideas. And the book of Genesis is doing that for the people of God in the days of Moses.